there are some huge changes coming to Diablo 4 for launch based on feedback from the beta. Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. I'm Stylosa. So we're going to take a look at this massive developer post which has just gone live. It is the Diablo 4 open beta retrospective, transforming feedback into changes. Now, to kind of give you the TLDR of this, there are a load of changes to the way dungeons will function, especially to layouts, which was a lot of feedback on negative layouts. Well, I guess negative feedback on layouts. So things like it was very repetitive. You could very clearly see the way dungeons were put together. Obviously, it was annoying to run around dungeons. It was super annoying to kill all the mobs in the dungeons. So hopefully these things get changed in the future. But we do get information as to what they're going to do to the dungeon layouts, dungeon events, dungeon gameplay. We get changes coming to classes. And yes, the Barbarian does get a buff. There's UI changes, encounter changes, changes to Cellars, and general quality of life changes. So let's get stuck into this. Blizzard say, after the early access and open beta weekends concluded, the development team read through all of your feedback and reviewed gameplay data. Using this information, we have made a variety of fixes and updates to various systems in Diablo 4, all of which will be present in the final version of the game, or rather the version of the game that launches on June the 6th. None of this would have been possible without the community's dedication and love for the Diablo universe, to which we say thank you. Dungeons, dungeon layouts. One of the most common pieces of feedback we received is that players felt they were doing a lot of backtracking with certain dungeons. We have optimized multiple dungeons across zones to minimize the need for backtracking. Here is a list of the dungeons specifically in the Fractured Peak zone which received layout updates. Caldara Gate, Defiled Catacombs, Derelict Lodge, Forbidden City, Hoarfrost Demise, Immortal Emanation, Core Dragon Barracks, Moorwood, and Rime Scar Caverns. And the developer notes are, our primary goal with the layout changes was to reduce certain kinds of backtracking which detract from a player's experience. An example of this change is that players previously needed to enter side rooms to interact with structure objects, causing them to retread the same path. Now, many of our structure objects have been repositioned along main dungeon pathways, making them easier for players to reach and allowing them to readily explore the dungeon after defeating the structure. Now, this is good, but obviously there's still a lot that needs to be done for dungeons. The big worry is if dungeons are a heavy component of endgame, which we basically know they are, we don't want to be running the same templates over and over again. So there still needs to be more template variety, but these are good changes, and it's good to see they're coming to the actual launch version of the game. Dungeon events. The chance for an event to spawn inside of a dungeon has increased from 10 to 60%. Now, this is a big increase. I mean, a 60% chance. That is a high chance that you're going to get some sort of event spawning in a dungeon. And this is good because the events do make the dungeons a little bit more interesting. So nice one. Dungeon gameplay. To reduce the need to backtrack, small numbers of straggling monsters will seek out the player to help complete the kill all monsters objective. Now let's just touch on this for a second. I still don't like kill all monsters as an objective. It's terrible because you'll run through the dungeon, you might miss a few mobs, then you're going to have to go back and kill them. It's not great. This change, though, is saying, look, we still want you to kill all the mobs, but we're going to make them sort of run towards you, so they'll seek you out. So that's kind of okay. Now, if this is super aggressive, so they really rush towards you, you can just murder them, then yeah, that's fine, you know. But if it's not, and it's still kind of, they're not very sticky, you're still gonna have to run after the mobs, it's still annoying. I still think a better solution to this is like kill 80% of the mobs, or 85, or even 90. Killing 100 is like, oh, it gets super annoying when you miss that one mob. But yeah, it's good to see that they're starting to address this. When Animus is gathered, the player and nearby allies will gain 10 resource, reduce all active cooldowns by 1 second. Depositing Animus channel time was reduced from 3 to 0 seconds. Again, this is another great change because standing there like you was like literally like a pleb, but like, oh yes, 3 seconds, it was crap. It didn't feel very fluid. 0 seconds is great. Make it instant. The time to rescue was reduced from 3 to 1.5 seconds. All rescue objectives now drop a health potion upon completion. While carrying the ancient statue, bloodstone, mechanical box, or stone carving, you will receive a momentum bonus, granting a 25% move speed increase to you and nearby allies. This is a change to try and combat the frankly terrible mechanic of you know what it's like. You go to a barrier and you're like, oh god, I need to get both of the items in there, the other side of the dungeon, and you've got to run to the right side, pick it up, run back, and then you have to run to the left side, pick it up and run back. You guys know what this is like. This is going to make this less painful because you're just going to move faster when you pick up one of the items, so that's fine. Pedestals have had their channel time reduced from 2 to 0 seconds. Again, this is great because you don't want to be... It's boring. It's boring. It doesn't feel fluid, and 0 seconds is what it should have been to begin with, so nice one. Returning a portable object to its pedestal now fully restores health, resource potions, and resets cooldowns for all nearby players. All doors will now generate a mini-map ping when they are opened. All structure objectives in dungeons now have additional combat mechanics players must overcome. So it'll be interesting to see what they are. And this is the developer note. While our dungeons offer a variety of objectives to complete, player feedback stated that the action of completing each objective felt tedious. We hope that providing bonuses such as the increase to mobility while carrying certain objective items will streamline and vary the experience of completing objectives. This adjustment is merely a starting point, and we intend to extend this philosophy to keys in a future update, which again is good news. So let's move on to some of the class changes. General changes. Effects like stun and freeze can be applied to elite monsters twice as long as before they become unstoppable. Reviewed class skills to confirm that all classes have access to sufficient skills that remove control impairing effects. And many legendary powers have had updates to their effectiveness. Good changes. Okay, let's move on to the actual class buffs here. So there's some big stuff. Barbarian. A flat 10% passive damage reduction has been added for the Barbarian class. Some skill tree passives had their damage reduction effects reduced to compensate. The Whirlwind skill now deals more damage and consumes more fury. The double swing skill enchantment refunds its full fury cost when used on stunned or knocked down enemies. Now, there's some big changes here, and I think obviously the top one of 10% passive damage reduction has been added for the Barbarian class was definitely needed because the Barb felt quite squishy in the beta, which the Barb should never feel squishy. It should feel massively... It's a wall of meat, right? It should not feel squishy. So I think these are good changes. The Whirlwind one, consuming more fury, but now deals more damage, is going to feel more powerful because Whirlwind, you just would be spinning around. It kind of felt like you was doing nothing. Obviously, there were some decent items you could get, but I mean, the beta, you're not really going to gear up your character in the beta. If you just got straight to the max level, you know, Whirlwind just felt kind of a bit weak. So this is going to be good. And of course, obviously, you know, they're not balancing the game for the beta level range. They're balancing it up to the max level. So yeah, this is good changes, though, for the Barbarian. Should feel more tanky. Druid. Companion skills will now deal heavily increased damage. All ultimate skills have had their cooldowns reduced. Usability improvements have been made to maul and pulverize. Using non-shape-shifting skill will transform a Druid back into their human form. Now, I'm going to straight up say, I didn't get much experience with the Druid in the beta. I played a bit of it and I was really, really bored. I did watch a bunch of people play the Druid, and to me it just looked like there was ways of building him to do, or her, to do high damage. But beyond that, you were just sort of waiting for abilities to come up to use them. It felt really trash gameplay, if you ask me. So these changes are probably going to be decent, a step in the right direction for the Druid. But as I say, like, I think that's probably the weakest class that we played in the beta. Just based off like its impact and also the way it felt. But yeah, there were ways you could build it to make it an absolute killing machine. But again, you know, optimizing for low levels in the beta is not really going to be a thing when the game launches. So moving on from possibly the worst class to the best class in the beta, the Necromancer. Or maybe the Sorcerer you could say is the best. I don't know. The Necro was totally broke. So the Necro, summoned minions will die more often, requiring players to utilize corpses more often. Okay. Many bonuses in the Book of the Dead have had their stats increased. The damage dealt by corpse explosion skill has been reduced. The brightness of the skeletal warriors and mages has been reduced, which is the biggest change because they look stupid. But I know why they glow, so you can tell them apart from just general skelly mobs in the game. But honestly, they look terrible. So it's good news that they've toned them down. Now, the issue with Corpse Explosion is an interesting one because there's that legendary affix, which I cannot remember the name of it, but it basically meant you could chain react Corpse Explosion. So you just would like could blow the whole screen up and kill all the mobs. So yeah, and also corpse explosion itself is getting nerfed because obviously it explodes corpse. Anything that explodes corpse leads to corpse explosion, and the damage has been reduced. So yeah, less damage for the Necro. But I think the Necro is still going to be pretty strong. What often happens in ARPGs is the summoner classes tend to be very strong at lower levels, and then they get a little bit weaker at higher levels, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Necro, because we might not be seeing summoner builds when we get to the higher sort of end game. It probably will go in a different direction. But yeah, so could be one of the reasons why the Necros look super strong in the beta, because they're really strong at low levels anyway, because they're a summoner class. But yeah, they definitely needed nerfing to some degree. Rogue. Upgrades for subterfuge skills have had their bonuses increased. Multiple passive skills have had their bonuses increased. All imbuement skills have had their cooldowns increased. So some decent changes there for the Rogue. Right, let's move on to the Sorcerer. This is where I spent most of my playtime in the beta. And yeah, check this out. Charged bolts damage was increased, and the mana cost to cast has decreased. Decrease the damage of Chain Lightning and reduce its effectiveness against bosses. Now, Chain Lightning, if you fully spec'd into Chain Lightning, it was kind of a boring gameplay style. You just spam Chain Lightning. You would probably take Teleport as well. But basically, you just be spamming Chain Lightning, right? Teleport for movement, Chain Lightning, Chain Lightning. You run out of mana very fast, but it didn't matter because Chain Lightning, even against one target or a high health mob like a boss, you could spam, like basically fire the Chain Lightning into it, and it would rebound off your Sorcerer and back into it and just do massive amounts of damage. So it really did need nerfing. I mean, you could just destroy whole groups of mobs with it as well. It was just absolutely OP. So yeah, again, decrease the damage of Chain Lightning and reduce its effectiveness against bosses. Decrease the cooldown for the Incinerate skill enchantment bonus. Firewalls will now spawn underneath enemies more frequently when using its enchantment bonus, and increase the lucky hit chance for the Meteor Strike for Meteor skills enchantment bonus. So I think the big takeaway there is they're trying to push a little bit more maybe into Firewall, a little bit away from the ridiculous power of Chain Lightning. But I still think Sorcerer is going to be really strong. I mean, Sorcerer has the best movement ability in the game by an absolute mile, which, by the way, if you play on an ultra-wide screen monitor, you can teleport further than somebody who doesn't. It's crazy. But yeah, it's such a powerful ability. And just think, when you're fully leveled and you're fully skilled into teleport, I mean, oh my God, it's just going to be so rapid. Developer notes on all these changes are, whenever we introduce changes to our classes, it is with the goal of making both them and their skills feel impactful and powerful. Your feedback has helped us uphold this ideal. Some players have adeptly noticed that certain skills were too powerful. One of our goals for skills is to have them be interesting to wield and interactive in terms of itemization and combat feel. We've made some changes to help in this regard, with one example being the Necromancer's minions. We have made a change that makes them more vulnerable in combat, which will make Raising the Dead a more active component of the Necromancer's gameplay. Launch is just the first step of our class balance journey, and you can expect further updates that iterate on this pillar of Diablo. UI. Fixed an issue where the built-in screen reader was not reading key prompts, game option details, and other UI text. Fixed an issue where actions could not be bound to the mouse wheel. Fixed an issue where evade couldn't be bound to the right analog stick on controller. Chat will now display on the left side of the screen when using the centered action bar configuration. A character's stats will be displayed by default when players click the materials and stats button with their inventory. The move, and interact inputs can now be mapped to one button, while the primary attack input is mapped to a secondary button. The sans serif font used in game has been replaced with a new serif font. Big takeaway there, no more of that stupid mobile game font. But I just still would have preferred the traditional Diablo font on everything. It's more thematic, but okay, whatever. It's more readable with a serif font. Encounters fixed multiple issues that allowed bosses like the Butcher to become unresponsive. Now, this was funny because the Butcher would just stand there sometimes and you just kill him, which was great to kill the Butcher, but he won't be doing that on live. He'll just be butchering you, so be aware. The Butcher has been reevaluated for difficulty and will present a greater challenge in the world tiers 3 and 4. Bosses such as Chort, or Tchort, I can never say that, Malnock and Vaynard and others were reevaluated for melee character difficulty, resulting in changes to attacks and fight mechanics. Fixed an issue where vampire brutes using the shadow enchant affix would chain cast Impale. Cellars also get some changes. Increase the chance for a dungeon event to occur in Cellars. Cellars will now consistently reward a chest upon completion, fixed an issue where Cellars would prematurely be marked as completed, and fixed an issue where the guaranteed elite monster would be absent from a cellar. And finally, we've got some general quality of life changes. Fixed an issue where players could increase attack speed by move cancelling attacks early. Fixed an issue where characters weren't immune and untargetable after loading into an area. The reset dungeon button has been disabled. Fixed an issue that caused Gale Valley and Serac Rapture to have less monsters than intended until the campaign quests in those territories were completed. So there you go, everybody. That is the developer update leading into launch, I suppose, based on everything they learned from the beta. Now, I've been playing a ton of Diablo. Well, I played a ton of Diablo when the beta was active. I was quite surprised at how the game actually took me in. Obviously, it's got its issues, but I found it very addicting. And this is going to be something I'm going to monitor for a while. And I will keep content coming, and we'll see how people react to it. And we'll just go from there, because I am looking forward to playing the game. And yeah, we'll just see where this goes, because who knows? Could go anywhere. Okay, thank you everybody for listening and watching the video. And remember, I'll catch you guys on the next one. See you soon.